Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Easy English Podcast. I'm Hannah, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Alex. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hi, Hannah. I am doing fantastic, thank you. And a big hello to all our listeners joining us from all around the world. I'm really excited about today's topic because it is something we use every single day, but it can be a bit tricky for English learners.
Yes, absolutely. Today, we are talking about how to talk about the things we like more than other things. Specifically, we are looking at two very common phrases, prefer and would rather. I know so many students who get these two confused.
That is so true, Hannah. They both mean that you like one thing more than another thing. But the way we use them in a sentence, the grammar, is quite different. And we also use them in slightly different situations.
Exactly. And that's what we want to make super clear today. By the end of this episode, our listeners will be able to choose the right one automatically without even thinking about it. So, Alex, let's start with the absolute basics. What is the main difference between them?
Great starting point. The easiest way to think about it is that we use prefer for general preferences, things you like in general, day in and day out. For example, I prefer tea to coffee. This means in my life, generally, I like tea more.
Okay, so prefer is for your general lifestyle, your permanent tastes. Like, I prefer summer to winter.
Perfect, exactly. But would rather is usually for a specific, immediate choice right now in this moment. For example, if we are sitting in a cafe right now and the waiter asks what we want to drink, I might say, I would rather have tea than coffee today.
Oh, I see. So prefer is my general personality, but would rather is my decision in this exact second.
Yes, that is a really good way to put it. Let me give you another example. Imagine you love movies. Generally, you can say, I prefer watching movies at the cinema. That is your general habit. But tonight, you are really tired. You are sitting on your sofa. Your friend asks, do you want to go to the cinema tonight? You say, no, I would rather stay home tonight.
That makes total sense. I prefer the cinema in general, but tonight, specifically, I would rather stay home. That is a really clear difference. But Alex, what about the grammar? I think this is where people make the most mistakes. For example, can I say, I prefer tea than coffee?
That is actually one of the most common mistakes. Let's look at the word prefer first. When we compare two things with prefer, we use the word to, not than. So we say, I prefer tea to coffee.
So prefer A to B, not prefer A than B. That is a huge one. Let me practice. I prefer dogs to cats. Is that right?
Spot on. Perfect. I prefer dogs to cats. What about with verbs, with actions? If we use verbs with prefer, we usually use the ing form. For example, I prefer reading books to watching TV.
So both verbs get the ing at the end, and we still use to in the middle. I prefer reading to watching.
Yes, exactly. You've got it. Now, let's look at would rather. This is where the grammar changes completely. With would rather, we do not use to, and we do not use ing. We use the base form of the verb, the infinitive without to. And when we compare two things, we use than, not to.
Wait, let me make sure I wrote that down. So with would rather, we use the simple verb, and we use than to connect them?
Yes, precisely. So for example, I would rather drink tea than coffee. Or I would rather read a book than watch TV.
Oh, wow. That is completely different. Let me try one. If I want to say I want to walk instead of taking the bus today, I should say I would rather walk than take the bus today. Is that correct?
That is absolutely perfect, Hannah. You used walk, the simple verb, and take, the simple verb, and you connected them with than. You didn't say to walk or taking. Excellent job.
Thank you. It actually sounds very natural when you say it like that. But I can see why learners get confused. They want to mix them up. They want to say, I would rather to walk, or I prefer walk than take the bus.
Yes, those are the exact mistakes I hear every day in my classes. Students love to say would rather to. But remember, listeners, would rather behaves like a modal verb, just like should or could. You would never say, I should to go, right? You say, I should go. It is the same with would rather. You say, I would rather go.
By the way, if you are finding this episode helpful, taking a quick second to like and subscribe really helps our little podcast reach more English learners around the world.
It truly does. And please leave any grammar questions in the comments. We read and answer all of them. Anyway, back to would rather.
That is an amazing tip, Alex. Thinking of would rather, like should, makes it so much easier to remember not to use to. Let's repeat that for everyone. I should go, so I would rather go. No to allowed.
Exactly. And another little detail that makes would rather sound very natural is the contraction. In spoken English, we almost never say, I would rather in full. We shorten I would to I'd.
Ah, yes, I'd rather. Like, I'd rather stay home, or I'd rather eat pizza tonight.
Yes, I'd rather. It is very fast, very smooth. I'd rather have a salad for lunch. It sounds much more natural than I would rather.
Definitely. I use I'd rather all the time without even thinking about it. Let's do a quick little game to help our listeners practice this. I will give you a situation, Alex, and you tell me which one is better to use, prefer or would rather. Ready?
I am always ready for a game, Hannah. Let's do it.
Okay, situation 1. You are looking at a menu at a restaurant right now. You are deciding between the fish and the chicken for your dinner. Which one do you use?
Since this is a specific choice right now for my dinner tonight, I would use would rather. I would say, I'd rather have the chicken than the fish tonight, please.
Perfect. Okay, situation 2. You are talking to a new friend about music. You want to tell them that you enjoy rock music much more than pop music in your life.
This is a general taste, a permanent lifestyle choice. So I would use prefer. I would say, I prefer rock music to pop music.
Beautifully done. You see, when you think about it as specific moment versus general taste, it becomes so much clearer. But what about when we want to say the negative? How do we say we do not want to do something?
This is a great question, and it's another place where the grammar is different. For prefer, we just use the normal helper verbs. For example, I don't prefer, or I prefer not to do. For example, I prefer not to travel by plane.
Okay, I prefer not to travel. And what about would rather?
For would rather, we simply put not right after rather. So it becomes would rather not. For example, I'd rather not go out tonight. Notice that we do not use don't or doesn't here.
So we don't say I wouldn't rather. We say I would rather not, or I'd rather not.
Yes, I'd rather not is extremely common. If someone invites you to a party and you really don't want to go, you can just say, thanks for the invite, but I'd rather not go tonight.
That sounds so natural. I'd rather not. I love how simple that is once you get the hang of it. But Alex, I have to ask you about the words that come after these two expressions. This is where my brain sometimes gets a little twisted. When do we use to with the verb, and when do we use the ing form? Or do we just use the base verb? I always hear different things.
This is exactly where most English learners get confused, Hannah. It all comes down to what we call the grammatical pattern of the verb. Let's start with prefer, because it is actually more flexible, which can sometimes be the tricky part. With prefer, you can use the ing form of the verb, which we call a gerund, or you can use to plus the base verb, which we call the infinitive.
Wait, so you're saying both are correct for prefer? Can you give me an example of both?
Absolutely. You can say, I prefer swimming, or you can say, I prefer to swim. Both of those sentences are perfectly correct and mean the exact same thing. Let's try another one. She prefers reading books, or she prefers to read books. Again, both are correct.
Oh, that makes prefer quite friendly. I can choose either the ing form or the to form. But is there a small difference in how they sound to native speakers?
Generally, they are interchangeable when we talk about general habits. However, using the ing form like I prefer cooking sounds very natural and relaxed when talking about your general hobbies. Using to like I prefer to cook can sometimes sound just a tiny bit more formal, but really you can use either without any worry.
Okay, got it. So prefer goes with ing or to plus the verb. Now, what about would rather? Does it also have two options?
No, would rather is much more strict. It only has one option, and this is where the big mistake happens. After would rather, we always use the base verb. That means no to and no ing, just the plain, simple verb.
Ah, so the base verb. Let me try. I should say, I would rather stay home, not I would rather to stay home, and definitely not I would rather staying home. Am I right?
Spot on. That is 100% correct. I would rather stay home is perfect. The mistake I hear all the time from students is, I'd rather to go to the beach. That little word to just sneaks in there because people think of prefer to, but you must leave to behind when you use would rather.
That is a huge tip. So would rather is naked, it doesn't want to, and it doesn't want ing, just the bare verb. I'd rather eat pizza, I'd rather watch a movie, I'd rather sleep early.
I love that description. Yes, would rather is naked. It takes the bare infinitive. Let's practice comparing them directly so our listeners can hear the difference back to back. Hannah, how would you say you like tea more than coffee using prefer?
Okay, let me try. If it's a general preference, I would say I prefer drinking tea to drinking coffee, or simply I prefer tea to coffee.
Perfect. And what if you're at a cafe right now and the waiter asks what you want and you want to use would rather?
In that specific moment, I would say I'd rather drink tea right now. Or even shorter, I'd rather have tea.
Exactly. Notice how you said, I'd rather drink and I'd rather have. No to in sight. Now, let's look at another structure that confuses people. What if we want to compare two actions in the same sentence? For example, choosing one action over another action.
Oh yes, like I prefer running to cycling. Here we use prefer action 1 to action 2 with the ing form, right?
Yes, that is the standard pattern for prefer. We use prefer followed by the ing verb, then the word to, and then the second ing verb. I prefer walking to driving. It sounds very balanced. But look what happens when we use would rather. We don't use to connect the two choices.
We don't? Then what word do we use to connect them?
We used than. And because would rather only likes bare verbs, both actions must be bare verbs. So the pattern is would rather bare verb than bare verb. For example, I would rather walk than drive.
Oh, wow. Let me process that. I would rather walk than drive. So no ing on either verb. And we use than instead of to. This is such a common test question for English learners.
It really is. Examiners love to test this because it's so easy to mix them up. Let's do a quick comparison. With prefer, we say, I prefer cooking to cleaning. With would rather, we say, I'd rather cook than clean.
That is a beautiful comparison. Let me repeat those two so they really stick in my mind. I prefer cooking to cleaning, and I'd rather cook than clean. They mean almost the same thing, but the grammar road we take to get there is completely different.
Precisely. It's like two different paths to the same destination. One path, the prefer path, uses ing and to. The other path, the would rather path, uses bare verbs and then.
This makes so much sense. But what about when we use the to infinitive with prefer to compare two things? Can we say, I prefer to cook to clean? That sounds a bit strange with two twos so close together.
You have a very good ear, Hannah. Yes, I prefer to cook to clean sounds terrible and is actually incorrect. If you want to use the to infinitive with prefer to compare two actions, the grammar changes again. We have to use a phrase rather than. So we say, I prefer to cook rather than clean.
Oh my goodness, rather is trying to sneak into the prefer sentence now.
I know, it feels like a plot twist, but don't worry too much about that specific one. The easiest and most natural way to use prefer for comparisons is just with the ing form. I prefer cooking to cleaning. If you stick to that, you will always sound natural and you won't get confused.
That is a huge relief, Alex. I will definitely stick to the ing form with preferred to keep my life simple. But thinking about how we mix these two up, I think I have made a classic mistake before. I think I once said, I would rather to go to the cinema than watch a movie at home. When I said would rather to go, my English teacher looked at me with a funny face. What did I do wrong there?
Ah, yes, that is actually the single most common mistake English learners make with would rather. They want to put to right after it. They think, okay, rather is like prefer, and prefer can take to, so I should say I would rather to go. But remember, would rather acts like a modal verb, similar to should, could, or would. We never say I should to go or I could to help you. We say I should go and I could help.
Oh, that is a fantastic way to look at it. If I treat would rather like should or would, then it makes complete sense that we do not use to. So I would rather go, I would rather eat, I would rather sleep. No to allowed.
Exactly, no to allowed. It is a total grammar crime in English. Let's practice that. I will ask you a question and you answer using I'd rather, followed directly by the action. Hannah, do you want to go for a run in the rain or stay inside and drink hot chocolate?
Ugh, that is an easy one. I'd rather stay inside and drink hot chocolate than run in the rain. Did I get it right?
Perfect. Beautifully done. You went straight from I rather to stay inside, no to in sight, and then you used then to connect to the second part, run in the rain. That was a flawless sentence.
Thank you. I am starting to feel the rhythm of it now. But wait, what if someone asks me a question like, do you want to play tennis? And I just want to say, I prefer not, or I would rather not. How do we make these negative?
That is a great question because the negative forms also trip people up. Let's start with would rather. To make it negative, we just add not right after rather. So we say, I would rather not. For example, do you want to go out tonight? Actually, I'd rather not. I'm very tired.
Oh, that sounds very polite and elegant. I'd rather not. No, don't, or doesn't needed there, right? Just rather not?
Exactly. You don't need any auxiliary verbs like don't, just would rather not. Now, let's look at prefer. How do you think we make prefer negative when we talk about a general choice?
Since prefer is a normal, regular verb, do we use don't, like I don't prefer, or does that sound strange?
It actually does sound a bit unnatural to say, I don't prefer. Instead, we usually say, I prefer not to. For example, I prefer not to travel during the busy holidays. Or, if we are comparing two things, we might say, I prefer tea to coffee. And the negative is just, I don't like coffee, I prefer tea. But if you want to express a negative preference on the spot, I prefer not to is the way to go.
Okay, let me compare those two negatives. If someone offers me a piece of spicy cake,
and I don't like spicy things. I can say, I'd rather not eat it. Or I can say, I prefer not to eat spicy food. Is that correct?
Spot on. You nailed it. Notice how in the first one you said, I'd rather not eat. No, to. And in the second one you said, I prefer not to eat with the to. This is the golden rule that keeps showing up. Prefer loves the word to, but would rather refuses to stand next to it.
That is going to be my main memory trick. Prefer is best friends with to, but would rather is allergic to to. That makes it so visual and easy to remember.
I love that. Would rather is allergic to. That is a brilliant way to put it. Let's look at another common mistake that happens when people try to use then with prefer. Sometimes I hear students say, I prefer dogs than cats. Have you ever heard that one?
Oh, yes. I think I have even said that before, because in my head, I am making a comparison, and usually in English, we use than for comparisons, like bigger than or faster than. So it feels natural to say prefer this than that.
You are completely right. And that is exactly why people make this mistake. Our brains are programmed to link comparisons with the word then. But prefer is a rebel. It does not play by the usual comparison rules. Prefer must use to when comparing two nouns. So I prefer dogs to cats, not than cats.
Right, because dogs and cats are nouns. So I prefer tea to coffee. I prefer summer to winter. I prefer city life to country life. Always with to.
Yes, you've got it. And if we want to say the same things with would rather, we have to change the nouns into actions because, as we mentioned earlier, would rather prefers verbs. So we would say, I'd rather have tea than coffee. Or, I'd rather live in the city than the countryside.
Ah, let's look at that closely. I'd rather live in the city than the countryside. Here we used than because we used would rather and the verb live. It is like a puzzle where all the pieces have to match perfectly.
It really is like a puzzle, but once you see the pattern, the pieces slide into place very quickly. Let's do a quick fire round to test this. I will give you a sentence with a blank, and you tell me if we need to or then. Ready?
Ooh, a pop quiz. I am ready. Bring it on, Alex.
Okay, first one. I prefer walking, driving.
That has prefer and ing verbs, so the partner is to. I prefer walking to driving.
Correct. Next one. I would rather walk, drive.
That has would rather and bear verbs, so the partner is than. I would rather walk than drive.
Perfect again. Okay, third one. A bit tricky. I prefer apples, oranges.
Those are nouns, and the verb is prefer. So we need to. I prefer apples to oranges.
3 out of 3. You are on fire, Hannah. Let's try one more. I'd rather eat an apple, an orange.
We have I'd rather and the verb eat, so the partner must be than. I'd rather eat an apple than an orange.
Absolutely flawless. You see how natural it becomes when you just look for those little signposts in the sentence? If you see would rather, you look for then. If you see prefer, you look for to.
It really does start to feel natural when you put it that way. But Alex, let's step it up a bit. Our listeners love practical daily scenarios. What if we are choosing what to do on a rainy Sunday afternoon? Can we play around with both structures for that?
Oh, I love a cozy, rainy Sunday scenario. Let's do it. Imagine it's pouring rain outside. You have two options. You can go out to the cinema, or you can stay at home and watch a movie on the couch. Hannah, tell me your preference using prefer.
Okay, let me try. On a rainy Sunday, I prefer staying at home to going to the cinema. Is that right?
Spot on. You use the ing form for both activities, staying and going, and you connected them with to. It sounds incredibly natural. Now, how would you say the exact same thing but using would rather?
Let me think about my partners. Would rather goes with the base verb, and its partner is than. So, on a rainy Sunday,
I would rather stay at home than go to the cinema. How was that?
Absolutely perfect. I would rather stay than go. It's like music to my ears. You see, the meaning of both sentences is exactly the same. You are just choosing a different path to express it.
It really is like two different paths to the same destination. But you know, Alex, I often hear people make a mistake here. They mix the paths. They say something like, I would rather stay at home to going to the cinema. Why does that happen?
That is actually the most common mistake I hear from English learners. They take the first half of the would rather path and accidentally cross over to the prefer path in the second half. It happens because our brains get tired and just grab the nearest connector, which is often to.
Ah, that makes so much sense. We get confused because prefer uses to, and we're so used to using to with verbs anyway. So how can we train our brains to stop making this crossover mistake?
The best way is to practice them as locked pairs. Think of them as team captains. Captain prefer only plays with team to. Captain would rather only plays with team then. You can't swap players mid-game. Let's try another daily scenario to lock this in. What about food?
Oh, I love talking about food. Let's choose between cooking at home and ordering takeout. This is a daily struggle for so many of us.
It really is. Let's say you've had a really long, tiring day at work. I'll ask you a question and you answer naturally. Hannah, would you rather cook dinner tonight or order takeout?
After a long day, definitely takeout. So I would say, I would rather order takeout than cook dinner tonight.
Perfect. You kept the base verbs order and cook, and you matched would rather with then. Now, what if I ask you the same question using prefer? Hannah, do you prefer cooking at home or ordering takeout?
For this one, I'll say, generally, I prefer ordering takeout to cooking at home. I used ordering, cooking, and the connector to.
You nailed it again. And notice how you said generally at the start? That's another great tip. We often use prefer for our general everyday habits, while would rather is super common for specific moments like tonight or right now.
Oh, that is a fantastic tip. So if I'm talking about my general life, I might say, I prefer tea to coffee. But if we're sitting in a cafe right now and the waiter asks what I want, I should say, I would rather have tea than coffee tonight.
Exactly. You've got it. Prefer is your big picture general life friend. Would rather is your right now specific choice friend. Of course, you can use both in many situations, but keeping that distinction in mind really helps you sound like a native speaker.
That is so helpful, Alex. I think our listeners are ready for a quick interactive challenge. Let's do a quick game where I give a sentence with a blank, and you, the listeners at home, have to fill in the missing word. I'll pause for a second so you can say it out loud, and then Alex will give the correct answer.
I love this. Ready when you are, Hannah. Give us the first one.
Okay, listeners, here is number 1. I prefer listening to podcasts, blank, watching TV. What goes in the blank?
The answer is 2. I prefer listening to podcasts to watching TV. Remember, prefer always pairs with to.
Great. Here is number 2. I'd rather walk in the park, blank, go to the gym today. What's the missing word?
The answer is then. I'd rather walk in the park than go to the gym today. Would rather always pairs with then.
Awesome. Last one, and this is a tricky one because it's a question. Would you rather travel by train, blank, take a flight? What do you think?
The answer is or. Did we catch you out there? In a direct question with would rather, we use or to separate the two choices. Would you rather travel by train or take a flight?
Oh, that was a sneaky one, Alex. But so important because we ask questions like that all the time. Would you rather do this or do that? It's a great conversation starter.
It really is. Well, Hannah, we have covered a lot of ground today, from basic preferences to specific daily choices, and we've cleared up those tricky grammar partners once and for all.
We certainly have. I feel so much more confident using both of these now, and I hope our listeners do too. Remember, practice makes perfect, so try using prefer and would rather in your own English conversations this week.
Absolutely. Well, that is all we have time for today on the Easy English podcast. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Keep practicing, keep smiling, and we will catch you in the next episode. Bye-bye.